Alright, everybody. Recently, I was recommended that I watch, or I should say rewatch, an old favorite series of mine that was uploaded by, I think, one of the most talented video essayists in the left-wing YouTube community. And I decided to watch the first episode of this series and commentate on it, and people responded very positively and requested that I watch the rest of the series and give my thoughts and commentary on it. Notably because, well, I feel everything said in these videos stands very well on its own. For one, I think that YouTube is very bad when it comes to keeping really good videos relevant in the algorithm. And on the other hand, I also think that, I get depressed when I see people in chat not know what the alt-right playbook is when I bring it up, and I want you guys to know. And I also think that these videos could use a little bit of modernizing in terms of just adding extra context that we now know, or just, bringing it up to speed with current events, comparing it to what's happened since these videos released, helps to make them feel a little more relevant. And I feel like a lot of what is said here is very valuable, almost required reading of sorts for progressives online. And so last time we watched the first episode of the alt-right playbook series, basically the introduction to the series. But here, we're going to start with the actual first part of the breakdown of the alt-right's behavior and how they operate. This episode is called The Alt-Right Playbook: How to Control the Conversation. There will, of course, be a link to the original video down below, and I highly recommend you go watch it. We likely won't be watching this whole thing from beginning to end because I had a lot of commentary, and that would take hours if we did, even though this video is 10 minutes. But also, I want to give you guys a taste so that you guys feel incentivized to go click the link in the description and watch the rest of the video on the channel where it came from, to leave a like on it, to comment on it, to subscribe, and to go send your support to the original creator. My goal is mostly to bring attention to this series, because I know a lot of you guys did not know about it before I showed it to you, and that blows my mind. But then again, these episodes are coming up on 8 years old now. YouTube is not great at keeping things relevant in the algorithm. So let's check this out. The alt-right playbook: Control the Conversation.
Say, for the sake of argument, there's this guy who's running for president. It's late in the campaign, and one of his chief liabilities as a candidate is that over a dozen women have reported that he sexually assaulted them, among them his ex-wife and a 13-year-old girl.
Ooh. And that right there is why I love Innuendo Studios. He does his research, and that right there is something that people were talking about 7 years ago, or were barely talking about 7 years ago, when it was like current, and now no one's talking about it. But yes, Donald Trump and Epstein were sued by the same woman who claimed that Trump and Epstein raped her when she was a 13-year-old girl. Also, the Epstein files just came out, and Trump is on them. Just saying. Hey, Heavy Gretel, good to see ya.
His candidacy depends on convincing enough of the voting public that these accusations are false. But then, shortly before the election, audio leaks of this guy, backstage on TV and unaware his mic was on, not just admitting to, but bragging about kissing and groping women without their consent. So, the first question is, how's he gonna spin that? And the answer comes in the form of an internet apology video where he begins with something like, I don't know, I never said I was a perfect person or claimed to be someone that I'm not. At which point, you pause the video like, dude, yes you have. You have done literally both of those things. So you pop on over to Twitter and comment on how this guy's apology opens with two comically untrue statements. And like flies to manure, his supporters show up in your mentions. And they say, that audio is from years ago. What he means is he doesn't speak that way about women anymore. To which you point out, yes he does. He did, like, 2 months ago. And they say, well, his opponent's husband actually does those things. And you reply, those allegations are far less substantiated, and if they're true, the candidate's not responsible for her husband's misconduct, and if they're true, that doesn't make this guy innocent. And they start leaning in on the why do liberals make such a big deal about coarse language, strong women can handle themselves, in real life there are no content warnings, and all you can do is lean back in your seat, laughing to yourself. What kind of debate is this even? There's not a single thing your opposition has...
It's not one. It's not a debate. They're not debating you. They at most they want to get you in a performative gotcha, but at the end of the day, the vast majority of them thrive off of the attention you're giving them, and they're trolling. They desperately thrive off of negative attention from progressives. That is why they troll.
Said that isn't provably false or irrelevant, and they change the subject every 30 seconds. They clearly have no actual position and are just grasping at straws because they can see they're losing. So you don't really have to pay them any mind. They won't endure. Thing is, they have. Not only does this manner of argument endure, it keeps winning elections. Why? Folks, let me introduce you to one of the most foundational strategies of reactionary rhetoric. Control the conversation. Much of what we discuss...
Nearly 8-year-old video. Absurdly relevant right now. It's actually insane that this video is not #1, page 1 of YouTube at this very moment.
In the series, we'll come back to this in one way or another. Now let's be clear, a lot of the alt-right is okay with or even in favor of sexual assault against women, but it's not...
That was a controversial statement back then. Post Andrew Tate, no one can argue against this.
Not politically viable to say so. So if their guy is a serial harasser and they want people to vote for him, they have to control that conversation. They have to let people think that a vote for this guy is not a vote for sexual assault. How it works is every one of these bad arguments is a subtle attempt to change the subject. Now, changing the subject mid-debate isn't a remarkable phenomenon. We call that moving the goalposts. And if that's all that was going on, I wouldn't waste your time making a whole video about it because that video already exists. Link in the down there part. Controlling the conversation is a bit more sophisticated. To understand it, we have to look at how the goalposts move and where they get moved to.
God, this video is so good. A lot of these things are things I'd always noticed, I'd always seen, I'd always felt, but he puts them into words and explains them and breaks down the nitty-gritty so well. Sit back and witness art.
Regarding how the goalposts move, you must understand this. Bad arguments are not a bug, they're a feature. I mean, what are the positions in this debate? On one side, it's this guy admitted to groping women, and on the other, it was all just locker room talk. And trying to convince people that a guy who said he groped people didn't actually grope people is not a favorable argument for his supporters to have. So they just don't have it. If their position is he didn't really do what he said he did, they've learned never to make that argument. They make the next argument. Because if we were to agree that it was all just locker room talk, the next argument would be, and he doesn't talk that way anymore, or and his opponent's husband actually does those things, or and coarse language has no negative effects on women. The trick is to treat you like you've already agreed to their position, and make claims that treat it as a given.
This is true outside of direct debate as well. Notice this in the rhetoric of demagogues speaking to a broad audience like Joe Rogan. Have you ever seen clips of Joe Rogan where he's talking about some insane conspiracy shit, but it catches on? Not because he's saying, guys, trust me, this is real. He's talking about it as if everyone already agrees with the fundamental core, statement of this is real. And then he starts talking about whether or not the reality of it is being covered up and there's an agenda at play. And when you bring the argument to these lesser important details, it psychologically tricks people into thinking there is no debate over this fundamental core point of the disagreement.
Already agreed to their position and make claims that treat it as a given. Cognitive scientists would call this presupposing a frame. If you're on whether or not he still speaks that way to women, you've unwittingly agreed that that's what you're talking about. And that's why it benefits the right to insist that language is harmless despite a wealth of contradictory data, because if liberals provide the data, it gets them talking about speech. Bad arguments are bait, because liberals can't resist digging into them.
Yes.
They don't like letting false statements slide, and often they won't even notice if that statement is off topic. So there are few better ways to get Democrats talking about what you want them to
I wish more was put there. Democrats will see something false stated and will desperately strive to debunk it and correct it, even when it's off topic. That's how they get you. They say something wrong that moves the goalpost and is off topic, but it forces you to acknowledge the wrong thing they said and move the subject off of what you were winning on. Man, they really do that often. That is like one of their that is 90% of how they engage in rhetoric. It really is.
Topic. So there are few better ways to get Democrats talking about what you want them to talk about than to defend your position badly. Regarding where the goalposts move, let's step back and ask ourselves, what is the purpose of debate? The liberal conception of debate is usually along the lines of Joseph Joubert's adage, the aim of argument or of discussion should not be victory, but progress. You're thinking Plato and Glaucon, or maybe Debate Club. Two sides debate until one side wins, or until a third conclusion is reached together. Either way, the goal of debate is to arrive at the truth. That's not what debate means on the right. There, debate is a chance to perform strength, integrity, and certainty. There, you don't debate until a victor is declared. You debate as long as you can keep eyeballs on you, forever if possible. There, the truth doesn't win because nobody wins, not in any formal way. You may scoff at that, but let's think about it. This is how political debates are structured in the US, where two candidates come in already knowing everything they're going to say, where it's political suicide to concede any point or find any compromise, and where who won is up to the voters. In such a framework, truth and falsity don't exist. All that matters is how much of the audience agrees with you. And if that's your framework, then what's in your best interest is to steer the conversation swiftly and efficiently to something you and your opponent will never agree on, because that gives you the most opportunities to look firm in front of an adversary. The value of turning a conversation about sexual assault into a conversation about sexist language is that the effect of sexist language is a place where the left and the right are fundamentally at odds. This is something Republicans can argue about till the end of time, because the left's understanding of systemic issues does not jive with the right's views on personal responsibility. Yes, of course, if the president spoke this way in the White House, it might be alienating to any woman who works there, but the right sees this as a personal failing on the part of the woman, not a systemic failing on the part of men. Sure, he shouldn't have said that, but really, she needs to lean in, and all the articles...
One thing that this series has, that I suppose ages it to an extent, is that the examples are based on the standards of the sanity washing of the shit that Trump was doing in 2016, 2017, 2018, and it's gotten so much worse now. I can't imagine Trump supporters even bothering to defend or acknowledge needing to defend Trump's, like, allegations against him for sexual assault, for example, right? Like, he was found guilty of it in court, and they basically just buried it. Like, at a certain point, one thing that he didn't know that they'll do is just straight up bury an entire topic and conversation, nothing it until it disappears and fizzles out of the cultural memory. The Russia payments to all those big right-wing pundits like Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, no one's even talking about that shit anymore. The whole right-wing YouTube space is getting paid by Russia. It got outed by the DOJ, and now it's old news. They'll bury these stories successfully if they cannot win with that knowledge being out there.
All the data, all the reports that say that's not how this works in practice, they are useless in the framework of a performative Twitter argument or a 1-hour TV debate. A proper understanding of institutional sexism just takes longer than that. Now, I should stress, because it will be true for most of these videos, this isn't a master plan cooked up by some shadowy alt-right cabal. Most of the people who argue in this fashion, not all, but most, are simply doing what works without necessarily knowing why it works. It's picked up through observation or by trial and error. And it's not exclusive to the right.
That's so true. Like there was some level of Machiavellian planning. I'd say like the best example of that would be Steve Bannon. But outside of that, this is very much individuals who have the ideological and personal goals aligning with that of the right that know how to game internet algorithms. They know how to reach a large audience. They know how to manipulate people into believing something. And they're doing it in mass successfully. And they've just figured out what works. And they keep doing it, and it keeps working. Doesn't always work, but it usually does.
Everybody does this sometimes. It's just that the right has made it core to their entire platform. Anyway, why would anyone use this framework? Well, if your opposition has facts on their side, then you need a framework where facts aren't important. But more broadly, if the goal is to win over the public, then the public does respond to honesty, but they also respond to moral certainty. And the right tends to sell certainty better than the left sells truth. This is what they're...
It's not just that. It's that the left being honest is necessarily less absolute in our prescriptions than that of the right. The left has very lax prescriptions about the world in general. Like, they're firm, don't get me wrong, but they're not like, and everyone who disagrees is subhuman scum. That is how the right thinks, though. They say what they believe, and then the implication is, and everyone who doesn't agree is scum. And they stand firm, and they die on that hill, and for some reason, that alone is enough to impress a lot of people, especially in America. Being confidently stupid is attractive to Americans. Once again, let me remind you all. U.S. literacy rate. I showed this on stream yesterday, and people were mind blown. U.S. literacy rate. On average, 79% of U.S. adults nationwide are literate in 2024. 21% of adults in the U.S. are illiterate in 2024. 54% of adults have a literacy below a 6th grade level. And 20% of adults are below a 5th grade reading level. The stat, 54% of adults have a literacy below a 6th grade reading level right there, should really stick with you. More than half of America cannot read a complicated word. They do not understand it. They cannot follow a dry like, it's why you can't expect the average American to read court documents or to read past headlines or anything, because more than half of them literally cannot read at more than a 6th grade level. They literally can't. Like, that is how fucking stupid a lot of Americans are and why they are able to fall for this stuff. We are not talking about a population of reasonable, intelligent people. We are talking about dumbasses here. The right has a monopoly on the dumbasses enough to sway elections. We have to pull the dumbasses over to caring about reality.
Tends to sell certainty better than the left sells truth. This is what they're good at. This suits their worldview. They speak of a universe where opposing sides never agree because agreement is impossible. And since agreement is impossible, you never have to compromise. And since politics isn't about compromise, it's just about outnumbering your competition by any means necessary and obstructing them at every turn when they outnumber you. There is comfort in the idea that people are just fundamentally different and that they owe each other nothing. And if victory is defined by holding your own, then the Democrats' desire for compromise is a weakness that can be exploited. On a gut level, the right knows what debate means on the left, knows that the left wants to meet in the middle. So all they have to do is bait the left into having a discussion on their terms, and then keep insisting that they should find common ground. You could work with us if you'd only try a little harder. Because the rules of that debate, where you concede points and look for compromise, in their world, make the left look weak. And as long as the right controls the terms of debate, conciliatory loses. That's how they control the conversation.
Here's the thing, though. The left realized this. They realized that conceding to the right was weakness, and it wasn't working, and started to double down and triple down. And in response, the right exacerbated the rhetoric to downright genocidal levels. Now it is not uncommon to just see a conservative casually drop that they want to see all trans people burn in the LA fires now. Amaranth, one of the biggest female streamers online these days, just said that live on stream, that she hopes the LGBT community burns in the LA fires. That is where we're at right now. The idea that the LGBT community, the left, is just so radically left-wing and they won't budge, they won't compromise. Now they're saying that is justification to literally kill progressives. Like, I've never seen more overtly, like, can we just kill these people already rhetoric from the right. Like, there are a lot of them on Twitter and on, like, the more radical right-wing social medias just outright saying, okay, so when can we start killing the lefties? Like, when can we start, like, mass murdering progressives and minorities? Like, they're ready for it. They're begging. They're foaming at the mouth. The idea that we wouldn't compromise is used to radicalize people even more against the left. It's sort of a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing.
Move the entire debate to their framework using a bad argument as the worm on a hook. Now, understanding this, you may find yourself tempted to engage in that debate because, knowing the rules, you think you can dig in your heels, put on a better show, win over more of the audience. But the one piece of advice I have for you is never take the bait. Don't let them turn you away from the real subject. This guy assaulted women, and that has nothing to do with speech. Theirs is not a game that can be won by progressives. Even if you ruined them for some ignorant comment on the First Amendment, you'd only be legitimizing their rules, and those rules do not lead to a functional society. They are based on the idea that...
Remember, this is back when there was still quite a bit of debate within the progressive space as to whether or not debates were valuable in any way. And I think that if you have a very skilled progressive rhetorician who knows the deal and has a large audience or is going to be seen by a large audience and does it responsibly, debates can be extremely effective. I mean, think back to like the JonTron debate that Destiny did and how that like flipped the internet upside down. A lot of people got out of right-wing punditry because they saw progressive demolish the right-wing figure that they get all of their news and information from. And so that is actually a way bigger factor than you got to consider. But for most of you, this is true. They are just trying to bait you for attention, and you should not take the bait. But if you are a media-trained professional debater on the left who knows how to demolish one of these people in front of a large audience, it is an opportunity worth taking.
Differing types of people can't work together. So one just has to beat out all the others. You can't expect to run on those principles and not get flooded with Nazis, homophobes, and handsy rapists. So get it out of your head that you can win in a debate with the far right, that you can beat them at their own game. If you find yourself playing their game, you've already lost.
Indeed. What a good video. I really love the alt-right playbook series. It's actually some of my favorite content on all of YouTube. I'm going to drop a link to the video in chat for everybody. And it's also going to be in the description of this when it goes out as its own video, so you guys can go click it and watch for yourselves. Leave a like, leave a comment, go subscribe. There are many more episodes of this series after this one, so if you want to jump ahead and watch without me, then you can. But I very much want to go through these one by one and give my commentary, because I have so much to say. And these are some great videos that are very nostalgic for me, and it's crazy to me that they're nearly 8 years old now. Fucking wild to me, dude. Big shout out to Innuendo Studios. This is some great content. I highly recommend you watch the entire backlog of the alt-right playbook if you haven't already. I'm glad he's still making the series. Like, the series is still being made. It's just its oldest episodes are literally 8 years old. So, you know, I want to bring some attention to the start of the series. It's very worth. Anyway, with that said, if you guys enjoyed this segment, if you found it entertaining, educational, or enjoyable in any way, then please consider leaving a like. and a comment. It really does mean the world and helps immensely. It boosts my channel a ton in the algorithm every time you do it, and forces YouTube to push my content out to more people in real time. It means so much. Thank you to everybody who does that. And of course, if you want to see more from me on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell icon to turn on all notifications, so YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload new videos. And of course, if you want to see more from me on other platforms, follow my social medias linked down below. And if you want to support me directly, financially, help me keep the lights on and a roof above my head here at the Xander Hall studio, then please consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or support me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, Patreon, or buy some merch through the Streamlabs link down below in the description. Regardless, though, of how you support me, thank you so much for watching, and as always, I hope you have a good one.